shoes. Women's shoes. What do women's shoes have to do with engaging men in women's leadership advancement? Believe it or not, they're a great conversation starter. First, they represent discomfort. Certainly for me at this moment. But more importantly, they represent the discomfort that men have in even wanting to talk about women's differences in the workforce. Men are scared to death we will say or do the wrong thing, and we can have very long, fruitful careers without ever talking about gender differences. Second, they represent the different experiences men and women are having in the workforce. Long before Dancing with the Stars, there's Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And Ginger was asked about dancing with Fred, and she said, Fred's an amazing dancer, but a woman is expected to do everything a man does flawlessly while dancing backwards wearing high heels. And I think this is a great visual aid about the fact that men and women are having different experiences in the workplace, and no one is choosing to talk about them. They also are a complete violation of the man code. And yes, the man code does exist. And the man code says, avoid all things feminine. Feminine is soft, feminine is weak, and those things have no place in business. I have to tell you, if men had to wear these just 5 minutes a day, it would change things in the workplace. They also represent the current state of women in this country. If we look at 20 pairs of shoes representing the executive ranks of the Fortune 500, 17 pairs still belong to men. Only 3 pairs belong to women. And that number is largely unchanged for the last 10 years. We think we have made progress in this country, when in fact in big business, we haven't. And when you look at CEOs, that number actually drops to just 5% or 1 pair. In fact, Americans were asked, and 1 in 4 Americans said we will colonize Mars before half of the Fortune 500 CEOs will be women. And so it's about time. It's about time we have a new conversation. It's about time we stop asking women to lean in and we start asking men to stand up. With all due respect to Sheryl Sandberg, if men are 85% of senior leadership, we are 85% of the problem, and we are 85% of the solution. And so what I want to do today is talk to you about going back to your organization, because I don't have 1,200 men sitting here, so you have to take this message back. And you have to engage men in a comfortable conversation around gender differences and how it impacts women. So I'm going to start by getting comfortable, because it is all about men's comfort. Ladies, you all know that. To engage men, you have to go back and talk about real business issues. There's a concept in organizations known as male leader gender fatigue. Men look around the organization, see a lot of women, and think we're doing a good job. 56% of men versus 39% of women think women have made considerable progress in the last 10 years. But the numbers really aren't changing. The genders are seeing different things. And, by the way, women are clustered in staff roles and not operating roles that are going to lead them to the C-suite. And then we talk about, are gender biases real? When asked, 28% of men, roughly 1 in 4, said gender bias is real, but 1 in 2 women, literally 50% of women, said gender bias is still alive today. But it's not Mad Men. It's much more subtle. It's less overt. And so we have to go back and talk about these dynamics. Because anytime you add women to the mix, you get unparalleled business results. Just adding more women to a board of directors generates 53% higher return on equity, 42% higher return on sales, 66% higher return on invested capital. Adding women to the mix makes business sense. So how do we operationalize this in our companies? What does it look like? Men want to hear about two things, revenue and talent. Well, from a revenue standpoint, women are the economy of the United States. $7 trillion, larger than the economy of India and China combined. Women buy or influence, influencing being a key word, literally every category of goods and service out there. Health and medical services, not just for herself, but for her family, and oftentimes for her parents. Houses, this is an interesting one. This is the influence role. Women influence 91% of home purchases. Men, do you think you really had a say about anything about that house? You got your garage, you got your man cave, maybe you got a room of your own, but no, women's influence goes far beyond her purchasing power. Same thing is true in cars. Women influence 70% of car purchases. Now this one to me is mind-boggling because Mary Barra has been CEO of GM for almost 5 years. And yet in 120 years, car manufacturers have not figured out what to do with a woman's purse, other than put it on the passenger side seat. And you know what happens, you hit the brake and your entire world goes flying out in front of you. So ladies, if you're gonna do something, start writing Detroit about fixing their cars. The next one is do-it-yourself home improvement projects. I want you to think about Lowe's and Home Depot. Men are not sitting around on the weekend going, oh my God, that bathroom is hideous. God, we gotta paint that foyer. No, you get us up and moving. 83% of all consumer purchases made in this country are by women. In fact, women buy more men's underwear than men do. Think about that one for a minute. And then there is a war for talent. The war for talent is real. 10,000 boomers a day, largely old white men like myself, are leaving the workforce. We started in 2008, and we're gonna leave the workforce 10,000 a day every day for the next 10 years until we're gone. And new entries into the workforce look significantly different than our leadership teams today. 85% of new entries into the workforce are women and minorities. And so change is coming. Additionally, if we need a bright, knowledge-based workforce, chances are it's women. Women are getting 60% of the master's degrees and 58% of the bachelor's degrees. So if you're a knowledge-based company, you have to invest in women. And so once you have your business case, how do you go back and start to engage men? Because it's about time we stand up. And so I want you to go back and I want you to ask the men in your organization to do 4 things. The first one is listen. Seek to understand. Men and women are having different experiences in the workplace. Ask a man you know to take a female colleague to lunch and ask a simple question. Tell me about your experience working here. And by the way, she's not going to say anything in the first 10 minutes. You see, what men don't understand is women don't want to be the flag bearer for all things women in their company. Ask again, what don't I know? And then ask a third time. And in that last 10 minutes, you're going to hear root cause issues in your organization that you had no idea existed. Listen first. Then learn. Deepen your knowledge. Men and women are different. Have we talked about how the men and women solve problems differently? We communicate that differently. Do we see that as a benefit or do we see that as a loss? Did you know women are much more successful in sales because they can read nonverbals that men can't? And so if you don't have women in your sales force, what are you missing? So deepen your knowledge about how women add impact. Now it's time to lead. Set an example. Set an example to ask women why they're not interviewing for a job. You know you're capable. It's time for you to step up. It's time for you as a leader to talk about your business case. $7 trillion is nice, but if you can't push that down in the organization to middle management, then I have no scope of responsibility. So you've got to give it to me on terms that I can understand. That's what leadership looks like. But even leadership isn't enough to drive change. What it takes is having the will. And having the will means asking tough questions. This is what leaders do. Let's take one example, the pay equity gap in this country. Does it exist? Does it not exist? As I consult with Fortune 500 companies, they say, Jeff, prove to me the wage gap exists. And I tell them I can't. I don't have access to your numbers. But every CEO in this country can run a report and within 20 minutes know by job function and gender whether pay inequity exists or not. And if that's the case, why aren't you telling anyone that you have gender pay equity? This summer, the White House launched a pay equity initiative, and to date, only 60 companies in the Fortune 500 have signed the pledge. Well, what about the other 440? What do you have to hide? And so it begs the question, how do you drive will in organizations? Well, I have found that the will comes from a personal connection. And I'm not saying this is what every man has to do, but I have found this has the most traction. And it's being the father of a daughter. Now, this is interesting for women to hear. When I put my suit on and go to work, believe it or not, ladies, I really don't think about the people in my life, unless there's something on my daytimer. You know, go to this or do this. I put my head down and I work, and I never make the connection that if I'm not advocating for women in the workplace, what legacy am I leaving for my daughter? And yet I wanted to be a good dad. Whether it was soccer or dance, I supported my daughter. I made sure she went to a great school. And when my daughter graduates from college and makes 78 cents on the dollar to my son, I choose to do nothing. I choose not to advocate for this most important person in my life. Men need to be outraged that society and corporations value our daughters less than our sons. And the only way we're going to drive change in this country is to get a bunch of angry fathers involved in the solution. Because we love our daughters. And so I've created an initiative. It's a simple opt-in thing. It's called the Father of Daughter Initiative. It's built on 4 key themes: listen, learn, lead, and have the will to act. 10 key actions men can do on a daily basis to advocate for women. Print it out, put your daughter's name on it, sign it, and put it up on your desk to mark you as an advocate for women. This is free. You can download it at my website, www.ywomen.biz. Go back and share this with everyone in your company. Begin to have a dialogue, because the only way we're going to drive change is through active male engagement. You know, it's about time. It's about time for men to stand up. And when you go back, I want you to think about shoes. Not size 14 red pumps, but I want you to think and remind men about that first pair of shoes and all the dreams we had for our daughters. Because by reminding them about their responsibility, we can drive systemic change in America today for our daughters. So thank you very much.